If everybody could please just take their seats. Lovely, thank you. A very warm welcome to this session 3 on markets. I'm delighted to welcome our speakers. To my left, we have Andrew Clark, our Director of Policy. To my right is David Hughes, who is Professor of Food Marketing at the Imperial College in London. Our second speaker is Conor McVeigh, who is UK Supply Director for McDonalds. And then our third speaker is Damian Storie, who is Head of Fresh Meat Development for Bidvest. But without further ado, please could we give a very warm welcome to our first speaker, David Hughes.
Great, thanks, Minette. Delighted to be here. And I've got a lot to get through. We only get 15 to 18 minutes, and so I'm going to have to ramble through this and keep going at the back there. No slumbering at the back. Off we go. So, what's my title? Brilliant opportunities for British agriculture, but fasten seatbelts and crash helmets on. And I really believe that. I think there are just some brilliant opportunities there. And I know I only had 15 minutes, and so I came up with the first 10 that I could imagine. So let's get cracking. I mean, first of all, it's already been said this morning, we happen to be in a growing market. Here we are, 65 million of us, and sometimes we bitch that there's too many. And let's fast forward 20 years, and we're adding another 10. Now, just imagine being in, say, Japan, where exactly the reverse is happening, when they're moving from about 126 million, and every year they lose 1 million consumers. That's not brilliant. Being in a country which is growing, and it's probably our very best market, I think that's number one. It's brilliant to be in a growing market, particularly for British food. Second one is that often there's a sort of long faces when we talk about this decreasing self-sufficiency. And, you know, for good reason, we should be a bit grumpy. But I see it a different way. I think that, yes, it's been declining. I would suggest it's going to stabilize and then increase, that a greater proportion of our food will come from the UK. Why? Because that's what consumers want. The consumer trend tides are moving in our direction, which I think is just great. That's brilliant too. Okay, if you look at what you can do, too, in terms of increasing self-sufficiency, let's take a quick look at fruit. I was involved for 20 years on the board of berry gardens, and I'm close to what's happening in fresh berries. If you look back 10 years ago at the retail fruit bowl in the UK, the share of various fruits in retail value, there was berries at 12% of the fruit bowl. What is it now? It's 21, coming towards 22%. Of fresh fruit. How can you grow self-sufficiency? By having better varieties, by actually being on song with consumer trends, where you've got products which are easy to snack, which are very tasty, which raise a smile. And what else does it bring? It requires brave growers to invest and expand when they see the opportunity in that market. So can we drive self-sufficiency? Yes, we can. Consumers want us to do that. So what are these sort of changing consumer trends, if you will? Well, it's increasingly complex, the factors that drive purchase behavior. But if you went back to, let's go back, say, 5-10 years ago, it was largely about price. But it's food, you know, put it in our mouths. It's about taste and about convenience. But increasingly, there are more elements, more attributes that consumers, not least in the UK, want in their food. Of course, they want health and safety, but that sort of move towards health and well-being there's a lot of traction in that trend. Plus, the social impact of food, that's not just Scotch mist. I mean, there's something happening there that consumers want to know that food is being kind to the environment, or food production is kind to the environment, that we look after animals, etc. And that food, particularly for food when we're foodies, and remember, sometimes we're foodies and sometimes we're fuelies, but when we're foodies, when we're just celebrating food, we want the experience, we want the stories associated with food. And that's well reflected. If you look now that there's a genuine interest in who produces our food. We want to know who actually farms it. Picking up here with Marks and Spencer's, and I'm saying, you know, if you ask the question, how do you like your meat? And I think the answer is with adjectives, please. I want my meat with adjectives. And I think in history in the UK, we're getting much better at adjectives, but we've been particularly good at nouns. And nouns are good, you know, nothing wrong with nouns, but nouns are commodity. Nouns are, what do? I produce beef. And I notice the people who say that increasingly look like the animals they slaughter. They have no necks, red of face, and large hands, and they crush my little one. So what are they? Known provenance, a certain farm, Welsh black, grass-fed, vegetarian diet, you know it all. We have to be creative, think of adjectives that mean something to consumers and that they're willing to pay extra for. And if I look around at farmer-driven products, here we are with Piper's Crisps, the lovely Alex. He's a textbook use of adjectives in a crowded crisp market. I particularly like the Kirby Mallam chorizo. I didn't realize Kirby Mallam was famous for chorizo, but clearly it is. But others, let's move to Northern Ireland. And here we are with Mash Direct. What a great example of taking something at the farm end and then move it into a consumer food. And they fully understand the idea of a story. Or moving to Shropshire, just up the road from where I live in Monmouthshire, in Wales. And here we are with Be Fresh, where a farm-based business from Shropshire understands the need to connect the trends. Healthy and nutritious. It's convenient. So, do you really eat greens? Surely not, Daddy. You just drink them. It's drinking greens. Healthy and nutritious, convenient, premium, minimally processed, all natural, products with provenance, and artisan, not big food. So moving on. And is this need for adjectives in food, is it just a silly British thing or European thing? Not at all. Wherever I go in the world, I see this. In Thailand recently, and looking at their pork, consumers want adjectives in Thailand. They want happy pork. Well, at least happy for a large part of its life. They want all-natural, free-range, and herb-fed pork, and they will pay more for it. Next opportunity, which I think is, again, brilliant, is that it is increasingly easy for farmers to link with the final consumer, either selling products direct or having some sort of dialogue with the consumer or the shopper. Well, whether it be through websites, here's Donald Russell, a pretty large business, really, but down to smaller scale businesses like the Cheese Shed and nearer me, actually, Treely Farm. So farmers can get very close to consumers and start to work away at earning the retail margin, too. And you just look at how it's incredible what's happened with the internet-based, and particularly as it relates to shopping. And I just have two sort of silly examples. They're trivial, but I think, wow. Here in Japan, you can get a monk delivered via Amazon. As the role of Japanese temples fade, so a monk for a wedding, the temples are a bit slow coming through with it, so you just dial up Amazon, and you get a monk with Amazon. You're brilliant. And here is a surprising business opportunity, I would think. Amazon, eBay, and Shop Clues in India selling cow dung patties like hotcakes. And I say, does an export opportunity beckon? I would think so. Now, there we go. But getting nearer the business of these guys here, this sort of direct delivery to consumers and the opportunities that brings, we understand Uber Taxi, but here we have Uber Eats. So, for example, in Manhattan, if you want your meal, you want it from the restaurant that you know and love, then there'll be 6 or 8 really well-known restaurants that have linked with Uber for that week where you can have a signature dish just delivered to your home for something like $12. I mean, the world of retailing and food service seems to me is converging. And just linking for these two guys too, if I take Bidvest and McDonalds, that what is interesting is this convergence between food retail and food service, and the same trends that are relevant in food service are relevant in retail. This is Bidvest with its great food, pure and simple. It's about pureness, it's about simplicity, it's about natural, it's about provenance, and it's as important to McDonald's, for example, the great work that you've done with where do our eggs come from? Well, they come from your farms and they're free range, etc. No, it's moving in our direction. What about getting into the commodity areas? Now, I've got something to say on on some of the major ones. Look, for meat, there are challenges. I mean, wherever I look, particularly in the Western world, there is more and more media coverage about reducing meat consumption. Here's the Scotsman saying it's time to reduce our red meat consumption. If you look at meat consumption per person in the UK, in the US, right across Europe, in Australia, in Canada, it is declining on a per capita consumption basis. Should we sort of race out and slit our wrists? I don't think so. Why is that? Because what is quite clear, in most higher income markets, and that's what we are, then people are considering eating less meat. But when they eat less, they want to eat better, and I believe they're willing to pay more for less. And that's the opportunity. It's working out what do people value and are willing to pay a little more for when they're eating less. And that's in the face of considerable, again, media coverage. Here's the World Health Organization say, meat, it'll kill you. But what do I see if I look out in the marketplaces? Increasingly, there are premium meat products, dry-aged beef. If you went back 10, 15 years, you wouldn't see that in the supermarket. Now, increasingly, it is. What have we got here? You've got beef with adjectives, and adjectives that people will pay more for. What about emerging markets? Well, of course, there are some brilliant, that's one of the great global balance, if you will. As meat consumption per capita is declining slowly in high-income markets, it's going up in emerging markets. And, of course, there are wonderful opportunities, not least if you take, for example, the bits of the animal that we don't particularly want to buy in Europe. If you look at trotters or chicken feet or lamb flaps, lamb belly, lamb stomach, if you will. But also there are clear opportunities in emerging markets for premium products. But the question I asked that has to be answered is, for example, when I was in Thailand, but it could have been in China as it was the week before, that if I go to these emerging markets, here we are in Thailand, chicken, which is a preferred meat, is selling at, say, 100 baht, whereas, let's go down to the bottom. In this particular case, it was Tasmanian chilled tenderloin beef selling at 1750 baht per kg. And so I'm saying, if you're exporting into emerging markets, and particularly high-value products, you are selling super premium products, and you have to be able to put in the mouths of the shopper, the consumer, the answer to, I'm willing to pay 15 times more for your beef than my regular chicken because. Because what? We've got to give them a reason to pay that big premium. What do I see around the world too, which is a little bit, again, if you're in meat, let's be careful, is the incredible drive right at the moment for plant-based protein foods. I've never seen anything like it in my professional career. Here we have Impossible Foods, which is just been backed by $108 million, for goodness sake, not least by these well-heeled investors that you might remember, the Microsoft people, for the Impossible Cheeseburger, so a plant-based meat analog. And also, so let's move into dairy. You get non-dairy dairy. So here we've got almond milk ice cream. And this isn't some sort of off-the-wall, long-haired hippie-type company. This is Unilever, for goodness sake, moving into non-dairy dairy. So, and here we are for eggs, that we've got non-egg mayonnaise being sold through 7-Eleven in the US, through Whole Foods in the US. And whereas initially, if we went back 18 months ago, Unilever went to, remember who owned Hellmann's mayonnaise, went to sue Just Mayo, which is a pea protein-based mayonnaise. They went to sue them because they're saying, that's not mayonnaise if it hasn't got eggs. What did I notice that last month, this month actually, February 2016, that Unilever, through Hellmann's, is launching a plant-based food mayo itself. So, should we worry about this? Well, what it underlines for me is the increasing opportunity there is for plant-based protein foods. I think we're rather good at that. That requires rainfall, and we have lots. So I've used this with some of you before, but should we worry? Should we worry that the world is going vegetarian, not least in high-price markets, high-income markets? Well, the good news is, you can see it here, is that vegetarians have much lower sperm counts. Which I think that's sort of brilliant, because I've got nothing against vegetarians, God love them, but this is only a personal view. I think over a couple of generations, we'll have bred the bastards out. Yeah. So here we go. Yeah. But again, if we pick up these sort of big commodities for the big arable guys, look, things happen in the marketplace that aren't pretty over time, and you can see in the UK how bread consumption is on the slide in terms of per capita consumption in the UK. It clearly is. But there's a huge opportunity emerging for plant-based protein foods, to make the point. In regular grains, in ancient grains, in gluten-free grains, in single-estate grains, in vegetable oils and exotic oils, and particularly, I think, in pulses of every description, whether that be peas or lentils or whatever we can grow. It's just exploding, and it will continue, I would suggest. And when I see ads like this, I think they're just brilliant. Start your day awesome with British jumbo oats, low-fat yogurt, and real fruit. No, that's a superfood, and you'll just see markets for that expand at an astonishing rate. Now, moving on quickly, I haven't got, 5 minutes? Two. All right. Big food caught with its trousers down. If you look around the world, what's happened with big food? Big food is the general foods of this world, the Danones, the Nestlés. They've largely been caught with their trousers down. And why is that? Because they were over-processing food. I think that gives a real opportunity for British farmers, for farmers in general. And then now the big foods are struggling to find products which have a sort of more natural, genuine image associated with it. They're paying all sorts of money for small firms. And what did they do wrong? Dunking donuts to remove titanium dioxide from donuts. Hooray! That's what I said. But, why did you put it in the first place? If you look right across cereals, that they're removing artificial ingredients. And there's a huge trend to fuse simple, natural ingredients, positive for farmers worldwide. I think that's just great for us. What about dairy? You've got to say something good about dairy. But look, milk consumption, liquid milk consumption going down. But it's a huge demand, emerging demand for milk protein in high-value drinks. And look, I wander all the way around the world talking relentlessly, and when I'm in duty-free shops, particularly in Asia, and I see milk powder being sold right next to perfumes in duty-free shops, I say, come on, there must be a long-term super future for dairy products. I think so. I think we should celebrate the purity and simplicity of, let's take dairy products, instead of a small book of ingredients. What have we got in our milk? Milk. And let's celebrate that. So, almost the last one, actually. Where's the other opportunity? I was just looking at Airbnb the other day, and I've never fully understood, Brussels language. What is Scottish three-crop greening rule? I don't fully understand it. But I wonder, do yurts count? And I would bet that yurting would be a bloody sight better than milking. So remember what I said, brilliant opportunities for British agriculture. However, we know it's going to be volatile. I mean, it is for political, for economic, for social reasons. So fasten your seatbelts, crash hats, helmets on. Thank you very much.
David, thank you very much. If you're wondering, Confrence, why your panel is looking a little bit blank, we can see the pictures, but we couldn't hear any of the jokes. So if we're not laughing, it's just because the sound system wasn't reflecting it back here, but we could see the pictures instead. Please now give a very warm welcome to Conor McVeigh from McDonald's.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Minette, for that warm introduction. For us at McDonald's, the outcome of great farming is great food. As one of the biggest customers to the British food industry, we care passionately about our agriculture sector. Today, I'd like to share more about why we care, what we've learned during our 40 years operating here in the UK, and what we're focusing on for the future. I want to start at a low point for McDonald's. 10 years ago, we got a sharp wake-up call. Our customers told us that the food we were serving wasn't up to scratch. It wasn't what they wanted in terms of quality, nutrition, and in some instances, how it was sourced. We had fallen out of step with their expectation, and they showed their displeasure with their wallets and their feet. And 10 years ago, we realized we had to change, to give people reasons to trust us, and crucially, to choose our food. We served British and Irish beef, but hardly anybody knew about it, so we started running advertising. We added choice to our menu: porridge, wraps, fresh coffee made with organic milk. And we worked with our suppliers and farmers to improve the quality of our ingredients. These are just a few of the many changes we made, but each and every one of them was as a result of listening to our customers. Fast forward now to 2016, and we've been rewarded, achieving now almost a decade of consecutive sales growth. But we're still listening to our customers as hard as ever. Experiencing that low point 10 years ago means that we never confuse pride in our achievements with complacency. And that's important, because today the British consumer is more discerning than ever. People have more choice than ever before. They're eating out more often, and now taking a strong interest in where their restaurant meal is sourced from, its nutritional value, and whether it's responsibly produced. They're extending the same principles that they apply to their supermarket shop to the decisions that they make at the restaurant table. We serve over 3.5 million customers every single day, so we have to closely follow developments like these. And we have to adapt our menu and sourcing strategies so that we can give our customers more of what they want. Our commitment to British agriculture, I believe, creates a significant opportunity for farmers. Our customers love local, so we source as close to home as possible whenever possible. This translates into a spend of more than £500 million with British suppliers for our UK business each year. We serve only British and Irish beef because that's what customers tell us that what they want. And we now have a beef business that is a little bit more than twice the size of Marks & Spencer's. Our customers ask us for responsibly sourced product, and we've responded. And after Sainsbury's, we're the largest retailer of RSPCA-assured products. Our customers want freshness, so 700 million buns and muffins a year that we serve up in our restaurant are all freshly baked in British bakeries. One of the things that people say that is striking about McDonald's is how we work in partnership with those who matter most to us. Whether it's the franchisees who run our restaurants, the 100,000 people together we employ, or the 17,500 farmers that we work with. These are deep-rooted relationships. We've worked with the same family-owned packaging company up in Kirkcaldy in Fife for 41 years, the same beef supplier for 4 decades, and the same potato supplier for over 37 years. We're incredibly proud of the world-class supply chain that we've built, but there's no way we can take all the credit. We surround ourselves with the best suppliers, take a long-term partnership approach. We grow through investment rather than cost-cutting, and work hard to ensure that benefits are delivered not just for 1 or 2 members of the supply chain, but for all. My background is 20 years in the retail industry and the supermarket industry. And as I've settled into the last 2 years of working with McDonald's, the definition of partnership that I've discovered is just entirely different from anything I've seen elsewhere. Previously, meetings with suppliers and farmers might have been those tough negotiations in the boardroom. At McDonald's, we get out on the road, meeting suppliers in their factories, on their farms, discussing challenges and bouncing ideas around. We set clear expectations, and we have exacting standards, some of them the very highest in the industry. We're not soft on price, but we offer long-term security and make sure there's margin and enough margin for suppliers to invest. As a growth business, yes, we have to focus on efficiency, but every conversation I have with a supplier about savings is followed by a discussion on how do we invest those savings. Our top 10 suppliers have invested over £250 million in the last 4 years, and that gives us as a business an enormous advantage and a platform to grow for the future. But we know we need to earn that position as a customer of choice for our suppliers. If we're to do well, we must be the business our suppliers want to contribute their best ideas to. The business they want to go that extra mile for, particularly in the tough times, because we rely upon our suppliers more than any other food business. An average supermarket stocks somewhere in the region of 30,000 food items. If a product isn't available on the shelf, the customer, they'll groan, but they'll typically buy the product next to the gap on the shelf. At McDonald's, we source only 200 ingredients for our entire restaurant menu. So the cost of failure, even on just one ingredient, is unimaginable. If there's a harvest failure on iceberg lettuce, we're not able to serve up Big Macs. That 28 grams of lettuce, shredded lettuce, which goes into our best-known burger, could make the difference to hundreds of thousands of customers each and every day. Now, thankfully, those occasions don't arise because of the partnership we have throughout our supply chain, and because our suppliers invest to ensure risk is mitigated, and they go that extra mile for us, even in those tough times. And we've learned that successful suppliers, confident in their long-term relationship with McDonald's, feel empowered and are willing and able to invest for the long term. The only way that we'll be able to source the increasing volume of those 200 ingredients is if British farming prospers. So doing business boils for us down to a simple approach. Take decisions that are led by your customers. Deliver against them and work in partnership. But we don't know all the answers, which is why our commitment to agriculture is carefully planned and it's done in consultation with the industry. Since 2010, we've worked with the National Farm Research Unit and spoken to over 1,500 progressive farmers to understand the challenges, but importantly, the role that we can play in addressing them. The insights that we've gathered have shaped Farm Forward, our overarching agriculture strategy, with 3 focus areas: skills and knowledge, animal welfare standards, and improving environmental impacts. Farmers told us that they're concerned about attracting and nurturing talent, so we created the Progressive Young Farmer Programme. It's a 12-month training opportunity that gives students real insight to every aspect of our supply chain, covering pork, dairy, beef, and crops now. One of the students, Olivia, on the screen here, chose to work in our pork supply chain. And she used her placement to set up a research trial on the fat content of back bacon. And that's now the basis of her undergraduate dissertation. She's also secured a job from Tulip, one of our long-term pork suppliers. And Olivia's achievements are all the more impressive, given that 2 years ago, before that, she had never stepped on a pig farm. This year, we become the first major retailer to partner with the prestigious Nuffield Farming Trust. Together, we're introducing the McDonald's Nuffield Farming Scholarship, and we're delighted to play a part in setting the agenda of how a food company can work closely with the industry to make a difference. We set out to make Farm Forward truly pioneering, and it's helping to translate also our passion for animal welfare standards into success on our menu. And a great example of that is the move that we made in 2014 to moving to 100% British RSPCA assured pork, something which our customers can enjoy in their McMuffins at breakfast and bacon in our burgers. And the benefits are loud and clear since we've introduced that change. Sales of bacon have increased by 17%. We've also delivered a number of research projects through Farm Forward, which we've shared with the industry so that any farmer, whether you're in our supply chain or outside of it, can apply the insights. The Sustainable Egg group that we have has proven the economic and welfare benefits of providing tree cover on ranges. And this research shows that tree cover provision reduces mortality rates, lowers the number of egg seconds, and can boost income from egg production. We found that a 2% reduction in egg seconds equates to over 31p per bird. A 1% drop in mortality, that's 12p per bird, adding up to a total of over £5,000 benefit for an average flock. The case for tree cover for us is proven, so we now ask all of our free-range egg producers to plant a minimum of 20%. And this has resulted in more than 500,000 trees being planted across the UK and better quality eggs being served in our restaurant. These changes have landed really well with our customers over the last 2 years, and it means that egg product sales have increased by 14%. That's 15 million eggs, additional eggs that we've sold. It's another illustration of how, for me, business decisions rooted in what matters to our customers and supported by our partnership with farmers and suppliers can deliver benefit for all. Looking ahead, I don't see our customers' expectations decreasing or any of the collective challenges going away. Customers are adding more concerns to their list, and one of them is sustainability. The latest global risks report, released just a few weeks ago, has highlighted that climate change is one of the biggest challenges that we face today. Extreme weather events, risks which many of us are familiar with and make us rightly feel uneasy, present a long-term threat to our livelihoods. As policymakers turn their firm attention to climate change and sustainability, it's only natural and understandable that consumers are starting to worry also, and businesses need to make the issue a priority. As a major buyer of British and Irish beef, we have a part to play in understanding how the agriculture industry can find a more sustainable way to produce beef. So we've made it a priority and got stuck right in to solution finding. For 6 years now, we've been working with progressive beef farmers to measure their carbon footprint, test ways to reduce emissions, and share knowledge and best practice with others. What became very clear very quickly was that we can't change what we don't measure. We committed an initial investment of just over £1 million and commissioned a group of environmental specialists to assess a trial group of 200 farms. They completed 1,300 assessments and gathered 800,000 pieces of information. This incredible big data source was then transformed into a first-of-its-kind online business tool to help all farmers assess and understand their carbon impact and the potential savings which on-farm changes can make. It's available to any farmer, any beef farmer, anybody in this room, free of charge, and 16,000 farmers across 22 countries have already tried it. In parallel, we've invited the farmers who had those carbon assessments to join McDonald's Sustainable Beef Clubs and meet face-to-face with the experts across the industry. And the results have been dramatic. On average, farmers taking place have reduced their carbon emissions by 23%. This equates to a yearly reduction of 4.6%, compared to the long-term industry average of 0.94%. Put simply, these farmers are achieving 5 times the average industry carbon level of reduction. And with the carbon they've saved, you could drive almost 5 million miles in a tractor or power 221 houses for an entire year. That's the scale of the opportunity. And it translates directly into pounds and pennies savings. Andy Foote, a beef farmer from Dorset who worked with us, has identified potential savings of up to £23,000 a year as a result of taking this approach. So we know that our size and our scale can have a big impact. And if the results of this working group over the last 6 years could be applied across the entire beef industry, we believe it could achieve the voluntary reduction target that the government have set for 2020. And we're delighted to share these results in our new beef carbon report that we've released today, which is inside your conference pack. Everyone in the room who's involved in the cattle industry clearly has an interest in sustainable beef production. It'll remain an absolute focus for us at McDonald's during the years ahead because it's on our customers' agenda. It's a complex issue, but it shows how we need to work with farming industry partners to identify and test challenges and solutions before they become top priorities for our customers. It's also an inspiring illustration of what we can achieve when we work together. Together we can be partners, challengers, we can be pioneers. And today I hope I've assured you of McDonald's support for the farming industry and our commitment to work as long-term partners. And I'll leave you with one question. How can you improve, evolve, adapt your own business? Whether you make changes, large or small, you have the ability to create a sustainable future that is filled with success and rewards for all of us. It's a pioneering thought. But then again, there are over 1,700 potential pioneers in this room today. Thank you very much.
Connor, thank you very much. As chairman, I'm struggling a little bit. I have a Welshman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman who are all rebelling against the 15-minute window. So no pressure, Damian, but you are on a time challenge. We'll leave it to the Scots to stick to time. Please give a warm welcome to Damian Storie from Bidvest.
First of all, I'd like to thank the NFU for the opportunity to speak to everybody today. It is an absolute pleasure. I suppose on that, from Minette saying earlier on, are there any Italians in the audience today? There's a no, so my Six Nations tie has gone, unfortunately, but if there were any Italians, we were looking forward to the big Six Nations rant. Thanks very much, as I say. Really, what I'm here to discuss today is very much who Bidvest are, so I'll open it to the audience, apart from the name check earlier on. Does anybody know who Bidvest are? Great. Obviously, my job is done. So I'm going to go through who Bidvest are, what we are as a business and what we do, and then my role in terms of heading up fresh meat, the opportunities that we have and everybody has in this room of what we are doing with fresh meat within the UK. So, you probably have seen us, but don't really know who we are. Our business started in 1999 as, if people remember, Booker Foodservice, was bought by the South Africans in 1999 and was branded as, anybody tell me? 3663. Now, has anybody today got a non-digit phone? So has everybody got a smartphone or has everybody got a standard phone? Okay, if you've got a standard phone, and one of the lovely farmers earlier on did have, if you type in 3663 into your old phone, what did it spell? Food, very good. Well, at least we're getting on the right track. People are beginning to understand who we are. So as a business, in terms of what we do within retail, we currently have 15,000 products. And one of the key points that we're trying to do as a business is to make as many of those British as we can. As we move forward, and as the business moves forward, what we're looking to do is create within my area a lot more British Red Tractor AHDB approved products. Before I go into that, I want to discuss you, as nobody's heard about this, about what the Bidvest group structure is. So sometimes people get confused. There's Bidvest Foodservice, and Bidvest Logistics. To give you a little bit of an insight, Bidvest is an international service trading company, distribution, employing 141,000 people worldwide, operating across 4 continents. As I said, in 1999, the UK business was Booker Foodservice, which then became 3663. And when I joined this business in 2012, we didn't have a fresh meat offering. We looked at what we could do in terms of our market opportunities, but really all we were doing was shifting boxes. We didn't buy into what we could do as a business working more closely with British farming. In terms of the group structure, we've got Bidvest UK, which is our holding company, and then the Bidvest Group, and then we're split into different operating companies. So we're a large family group of companies with Bidvest Logistics and PCL Transport. You probably see the wagons going up and down the road, but PCL as a business distribute all of the milk for Arla across the UK. But under the BFS Group Limited, Bidvest Foodservice and Bidvest Logistics are run as very separate businesses and separate teams. So Bidvest Logistics essentially deliver to the likes of Pret and KFC, and we don't do any product development work with them. They decide what products they want delivered across the UK, and our business transports them. As I say, you'll probably see their wagons up and down the motorway. Really what our business is looking to do moving forward is more of the acquisition trail. So on a constant basis, we are looking at different businesses, specifically within fresh and chilled, that we're looking to acquire. There'll be some announcements coming out, but that's really what my role is all about, is to see what businesses we have out there working alongside British farming that we can acquire moving forward. And that's part of our 5-year strategy. So as an example of that, we acquired a business, Four Teeths, up in Oban. The main reason for doing that was to get access to the north in terms of our customers and our availability. But on the back of that, we also deal with local farmers up there. So we've got farmers that we buy our Angus products from for our Scottish market, and we also buy black-faced lambs off Oban, off the mainland, and off the islands of Skye and Mull. So really, as we go through becoming more of a regional business, we do engage with the farmers on a local level. So how have we changed? I opened it up, 3663, excuse me, which then became Bidvest 3663, simply known as 3663, and as now we're known as Bidvest Foodservice. Across the world now, you will begin to see that all of the companies that we've bought will now have the brand of Bidvest Foodservice. And you may well have seen the announcements last week that our owner-chairman is looking to sell off that part of our business, which is the food service element, which is very exciting times for us. So how do we operate? What do we do? In light of what Connor was saying about getting closer to customers, that is the key point for us, becoming more regional, getting closer to our customers and closer to our suppliers. So with that in mind, if we start at the top, where I spend a lot of my time up in Oban, we operate there very much with local suppliers, and every year we have a local regional supplier day where we invite up to 250 local suppliers to come along, present their products. We do the same in Wales, and we also do the same in the central belt of Scotland as well. So we're always inviting new suppliers down to see what they could do differently as a supplier to Bidvest Foodservice. Excuse me. We're also realigned our buying teams this year. So whereas beforehand we had temperature band category-led buyers, we're now fully supportive of category management. So you'll have one team that just sit and buy fresh meat, the same with fish, the same with poultry. So very much down the retail line. So we've become a lot closer to our suppliers and a lot closer to our customers. So what are our key ingredients? It's all about service excellence, great food. And what I mean by great food, I spend a lot of my time within the education and healthcare sector, very much getting it through to children about where food comes from. Now, just last year in December, we did a number of primary schools, and we asked them, where did your chicken come from? What do you think the main answer was? What was it? Supermarket, absolutely. So it was Tesco's was number one, Asda's, Sainsbury's, Morrison's. Part of our role within the food service, and in terms of the customers that we supply, is to get it through to the children who are our future, is where does that food come from? So part of what we're going to do next year and the back end of this year is to get more of those school children into farms, get them to understand more where the product comes from, rather than the classic response of, my mummy bought it from Morrison's. So that's really part of our great food piece. It's also about the value that we add to our customers. We're not just a supplier, we're very much a partner. Our team, in terms of our head office team, are always working with our customer base and our suppliers. And as a business, as you'll see, we're very forward-thinking. So I'm just going to drill into the three main elements there, and conscious of time. Service excellence, that's about providing great service to our customers and to our suppliers. We want to make our customers' life easier, to help them to grow. And how we've done that is by establishing our depots around the UK to make it more regionalised, but also to make sure in terms of our suppliers that we are working as much as we possibly can to select those products as locally as we possibly can, in as much as one of our key elements for our key depots across the UK is to make sure that we've only got up to an 80, 100-mile radius in terms of supply from our key suppliers. In terms of forward thinking, it's not just about building an infrastructure to suit the future of our customers' needs, but it's about protecting our planet. And that's key from our new chief executive 18 months ago, Andrew Selly, about what we do in terms of our sustainability. So what we've done is we've launched a new website called Plate to Planet, which is a platform for anyone in the industry, including yourselves, to look at that in terms of sustainability, hints and tips, best practice, and also blogs. So what we're looking to do is to demonstrate our commitment to improving sustainability in the supply chain, and we're delighted to offer our first website, which was only launched 2 months ago, Plate to Planet. What we've seen with that, in terms of our customer base, is very much helping them with their social responsibility. And what we mean by that is we're collecting oil from those customers, we're collecting waste food. Customers can go onto that website to see what the emission decrease is and it's very much part of what we are as a business in terms of our sustainability through our depots. So, did you know that 90% of food service customers claim sustainability is important to their business? And around 25% of energy used in catering within our customers, within those kitchens, is in preparation, cooking and serving food. So it's crucial that as our business, that our kitchen equipment is as efficient as possible. Working in partnership with Plate to Planet brings together food service organisations who share their experiences with us, their news and best practice in sustainability, which helps us drive sustainability, our process together across our organisations and very much through our supply chain. So the resources that are available to everybody is how-to guides, template materials, tools, but also where does your product come from? Very much to what Connor was saying earlier on, most of our customers these days are interested in where the product comes from. And we have to do a lot of work, give them that trust in terms of that moving forward. So I'm going to hero on fresh meat, because that's what I'm here for. So hot off the press, next week we're launching our own brand, which is known as Farmstead Foods. The key points to Farmstead and what our customers were looking for when we went out to the marketplace was very much of traceability, animal welfare being number 2, safety, trust and consistency. And that's very much led by our customers, but also specifically within the education and healthcare market. And the reason that we've selected some of our strategic partners for that is for all of those key messages above. So you can see, and as I said, it's hot off the press. We're not going live with it till next week. This is what we're doing in terms of the subcategories. So we've got those for all proteins. So our strategic partners, as of the beginning of March, will begin to brand all of those products within those particular brands. So, to name a few, and I'm sure a number of you are supplying them, these are our strategic partners. If we go back to 2012 when I started, it was very much been a journey. We invited a number of suppliers to come to our head office to present on would they want to help Bidvest in their quest to move forward with fresh meat supply. We invited around about 22 suppliers, and the suppliers that you see on this slide are the suppliers that turned up, and the other suppliers that we've worked with ongoing. So it was very much an element of trust. What we do as a business is to make sure that we work with all of these suppliers on a daily basis. And moving on from that, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about what we do with 2 of our strategic suppliers. So in ABP, it's all about ensuring continuity and sustainability, doing more with less. So in ABP, in terms of the sustainability, it's about reducing the carbon footprint, increasing energy efficiency, but clearly about today is working with the farmers to develop a more efficient supply chain. Now, one of the key points that we've given to that particular site is to make sure that they process the animals within 100 miles of the site, but also from our point of view, we want to be able to go to our customer base and say to them that they are eating that particular lamb from a particular region. So when we go out to the market, the majority of customers will ask us, where does the beef and where does the lamb come from? We very rarely get asked, where does the poultry come from? It's very much led on lamb and beef. And in terms of ABP, just on a few of their points, they're looking to reduce their water consumption by 50%, but the key point for us is about the zero waste going to landfill for the ABP group. In terms of the agriculture at Yetminster, they have a dedicated team of fieldsmen procuring local livestock for us. All the livestock is procured within the UK, and at that particular site, the regions that they're dealing with is mainly the West Country, Cotswold, and Welsh lambs. They also do a lot of work with the farmers, and part of that is hosting various AHDB live and dead grading sessions where they're invited to join and follow the process through to make sure that they're seeing what happens to their animals and the welfare thus forward. Our next piece is about Dawn. I'm sure a number of you will be aware of Dawn Meats. They have been our oldest supplier. They were the first supplier that went to work with us in Scotland when we kicked it off in 2012. And it's about ensuring the continuity and sustainability for us within our supply chain. So Dawn's mission is to provide consistent quality meat products from sustainable sources, which very much tied in with the blank canvas that I had, working with all of those suppliers on the number one piece of sustainability and making sure on animal welfare. So, aligned with ourselves, they are very much customer focused. If we didn't have any customers, our business wouldn't survive. We're very much committed to a sustainable supply base. We respect, empower, and engage with all of our people. And the key piece for me is we are dedicated to excellent continuous improvement. And that's continuous improvement working with the farmers, the processors, and very much with our supply chain. And as a business, along with Dawn, we act very responsibly. So, our sustainability charter commits to us achieving far-reaching targets, and they're in 3 sustainability pillars, which are social, environmental, and economic. Our key focus with our suppliers moving forward is about water use, energy use, as we've heard from a lot of speakers today, climate change. An interesting fact from where I live on the west coast of Scotland, in the last 3 months, we have had 3 dry days. The rest of the year has been complete rainfall. I live at the bottom of a farm at the bottom of the hill right on the west coast in Inverkip, and we haven't seen any dry weather in the bottom paddock for longer than that. I think it was November the 6th. It has just completely bogged down. So to what everybody was saying earlier on, we have got a swimming pool at the bottom, I have to say. But there's more to do for us. By 2020, our commitments include the following: improve water use by 40%, improve our energy use by 40%, and improve direct carbon footprint by 50%. So my final slide, and I think I'm on time, Minette, am I? I'm on perfect time. Have I made it back up? Why have we chosen ABP and Dawn? So a number of you here today will provide ABP and Dawn with your animals. The key factors for us and our customer base is about traceability, trust, but number one for our customer is consistency. If we don't deliver the same top side, the same silver side, the same lamb leg, the same chicken breast on a daily basis, our customers wouldn't deal with this. Because the big difference between us in in retail within food service is if you go into a restaurant and somebody's steak, which is supposed to be 10 ounce, is slightly bigger, then that doesn't work. So for us, it's about consistency. We have biosecure supply from processing from these sites to our depots. So if you look at the 2 sites that we're using for lamb and beef, the animals come into the layerage, they're processed within that factory, they're packed in that factory, and then they're distributed out to us. So it goes straight from the factory, straight into our hub, and straight to our customer. So in terms of biosecurity within food service, we are one of the most biosecure businesses out there. All of our products are produced to our specification and give Bidvest customers consistency and maintain supply. To Connor's piece there, if a school this morning, which it nearly didn't get its sausages, then those kids don't have any lunch. We have to make sure that our supply chain is rigid and as secure as it possibly can be, and that's very much driven by what we do with our suppliers. And our sites are constantly working with AHDB and Red Tractor. This is one of the key points within our business and certainly within education and healthcare. That's what they're looking for. We're working with local farmers and have great relations with a lot of them through many generations. If you look at the local abattoir to me, which is down in Stevenson in Saltcoats, which is Highland Meats part of Dawn, they're 3rd and 4th generation farmers that are going into that site. And I know a number of them personally, having lived there for a long time. It's very much driven by the factory about what they do and how they work with those farmers. But clearly, customers want to know more about supply. And working with these strategic partners gives us that, and our end user begins to know and trust us as a key supplier within food service. And that's it. Thank you.
Damian, perfect timing. Thank you very much for putting us back on track. We're going to open up the floor now to questions. I've got 5 questions in already, and if there is time, we will have some more. But if we could have Tony Bainbridge and David Shaw to the microphones, please. You'll know from a union's point of view and from a farmer perspective, we focus very much on the big retailers, but I'm really keen that actually we have a much closer look and work a lot more with the food service sector. You've heard 3 fantastic presentations today and some really good practice going on, but it is incredibly varied across food service. And I was reminded of this not that long ago when actually I was at a farmland bird lunch and my neighbour very proudly showed off her rib of beef that was on the carvery. And we went up to get the beef, and a equally nice looking joint of pork was next door. And Carolyn asked, and where's the pork from? Is that local too? And the girl said, in all innocence, yes, that's local. That's from Booker's, just down the road. So food service is incredibly varied, and retail is transparent. But if we can have our questions, Tony Bainbridge first, please.
Yes, thank you, Deputy President. Really, this question is to Conor McVeigh. I'm here. As a McCain potato grower who enjoys now a 3-year sustainable contract to supply potatoes which come eventually to your restaurants, I was intrigued to hear, as you elaborated the benefits to your business with such a supply chain. And I wonder why it is that other companies are not following that lead, because it was a very impressive story. And what do you think that we as an industry should do to try and get more other businesses following those similar strategies with that type of relationship to us as suppliers? It seems to me that fair trade seems to be the new assurance scheme. Thank you.
Conor, over to you.
Thank you for the question, Tony. And as I talked about earlier on, the principle of long-term commitment, long-term partnership is not something new for McDonald's. It's something that we've been doing day in, week out, since we first arrived in the UK 40 years ago. And the background on the specific question around potatoes is something that we've worked very hard on over the last 2 years, and it culminated in us being able to announce last October the results of that piece of work, which are that all of the potatoes that we use for our French fries are now sourced only from British farmers. And that was a considerable piece of work that we did in consultation with our producer partners, McVeigh and Lamb Weston, but also farmers like Tony. And the benefit of that is that I think it sends out a very clear and strong message to the industry about the commitment that we're willing to make, not only for 2016 or 2017 or for the period of those pricing arrangements, but for the long term. And that's important because I talked earlier about we've had a strong level of growth over the last 10 years in the UK, and we want to replicate that in the next 10 and 20 years. And the only way that we can do that is making sure that we've got fair prices in place, but also fair prices that are underpinned by a longer-term commitment that give farmers the ability and the confidence to invest in the capacity that's needed to be able to satisfy that long-term growth. So specifically on potatoes, what that move has allowed us to do is to extend our pricing arrangements for a longer period of time with McVeigh and Lamb Weston, and they've also been able to replicate that back into the 190 British farmers that we work with to source our potatoes for our French fries. So it's been a very big area of focus in the long term, and I'm very encouraged whenever I listen to other supermarkets or retailers out there who are increasingly talking up how important for them long-term commitment and partnership is. And some of those businesses are starting from a different starting position, and therefore they have to take a different approach. We're more advanced in that respect because it's something that we've been doing for a much longer period of time. So what I try to play a role within is when I'm at conferences and events where I'm meeting other retailers, it's a great opportunity for McDonald's to share what's working really well for our business and has done for over the last 40 years. So that's the role that we're playing. In terms of the last point of your question, Tony, around what can farmers do? You've got a voice, you've got a very powerful role to play in many retailer supply chains. So it's what you're talking about in terms of long-term partnership is absolutely aligned with what our customers are looking for. So you've got a great platform to be able to be more challenging and more demanding, ultimately with your customers and certainly with your retail customers, to be looking for a longer degree of partnership, such as what we've put in place.
David, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, particularly if it relates to McDonald's, why is McDonald's good at supply chain management? Why do they have great integrity in the supply chains? It's for the strong reasons related to commercial survival. That if you look at the value of the McDonald's brand internationally, it's like $85 billion. Now, how quickly do you think you can destroy that? Can you just imagine if you'd gone back 2 or 3 years ago, if you'd been involved in the Horsegate scandal, there's a bang, that's sort of gone in a flash, just like that. And it's sort of intriguing. And also, McDonald's is always going to be right at the top to be shot at. You know, if you're number one in fast food, then the world is looking for you to fall flat on your backside. So why don't other companies then get into the same level? Well, I think increasingly they will, as they start to understand the damage that can be done to your brand if you get it wrong in your food supply, your fresh food supply chain, or any supply chain for that matter. And every now and again, you can see those that try, for example, to take McDonald's on. In the US, there's a company called Chipotle, which is sort of so-called high-integrity fast food, which at one stage was part-owned by McDonald's, but then they sold it. And Chipotle, where they, look, our food is high integrity, and then suddenly they were found wanting. And the stock value of that company went from, let's say, 100 to 20 in about 3 weeks. So, response, you know, if you don't get into it at the level that McDonald's has done, then that is high risk, and big brands are increasingly understanding that. And I think that's really, really good news for supply chain partners, because the bigger brands of this world require supply chain partners down to the farm level without being patronized, not down. They need farmer partners who are willing to carry the brand integrity torch on behalf of their customers. And that's just gold dust.
Thank you, David. If we could have Tom Bradshaw and James Motterhead to the microphones, please, while David Shaw asks his question. Thank you, David.
Thank you. David Shaw, North East. My question is for Connor, and I am a customer, as are many of us, and I've sat and looked at your packaging with great excitement. Presumably you're aware that the ingredients you use would qualify you to use the Red Tractor logo. And customers, as we all are, customers, and you made a great point about customers, they are very much aware of what the Red Tractor logo means across all products. So are you missing a trick, and other food services suppliers, by not using the Red Tractor logo?
Should we get Damian's view first?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of our beef and lamb supply in the UK, everything that we put into our customers from Dawn and ABP is Red Tractor approved. So we do use that, even to the point of we have customers that specify on their menus within business and industry. So they will have a list on their menu that will have the Red Tractor logo against it. So in terms of the North East, we did some work with Dawn 3 years ago on lamb, particularly, out of the site there, where we did have a number of products, so leg, shoulder meat and diced, which was all Red Tractor. So it's certainly something that's very much within the food service business. More and more customers are asking for it. And it's very much growing, as I alluded to earlier on with the presentation, within education and healthcare, very much looking to get their food for life. So they're always looking to see what items we have. So that's it in meat, but if you look across all of our ranges within the Bidvest group within the UK, we do try and put as much as we possibly can do with Red Tractor.
Connor.
David, to come back to your question, I certainly recognise, and McDonald's recognise, the important role that many assurance programs have delivered, not only for the industry, but for McDonald's, and certainly Red Tractor within that. Whenever I look at our McDonald's agricultural assurance program, it's very much based upon the areas that Red Tractor focuses upon and based upon the principles there. So it's been enormously helpful for our business. In terms of the specific question around, are we missing a trick applying the Red Tractor logo onto our packaging or onto our menu, it largely boils down to a practical point. The nature of the customers that we have, for many of them, they come to us not only for the great quality, great tasting product, but for speed of service. For those customers that come in first thing in the morning to grab their coffee and get straight out to face whatever the day is going to present to them, speed of service is really important. So we have a window of opportunity that is very, very narrow, very tight in terms of the messages that we communicate to our customers. And that means that we have to go back to customers, share the opportunities in terms of the key messages, and get their guidance in terms of where the priorities sit in terms of messaging. And as a result of that process that we've been through, we haven't been in a position to put the Red Tractor logo on our packaging and on our menu. So it very much boils down to a practical consideration.
But surely, Colin, that's not about a time constraint. That's about a branding choice. You know, that doesn't take you more time to put the Red Tractor on. That's about a decision that you make as a business.
Well, it's a decision that we've made that's based upon consumer insight, and we know that customers have got a certain bandwidth in terms of the amount of time that they spend in our restaurants and how important speed of service is. They also guide us in terms of the amount of information that they're willing to and they're able to consume. So we have to make some fairly tough decisions and choiceful decisions around what messages we convey. And I think a great example of that there is in our breakfast menu. All of the eggs that we serve on our breakfast menu are 100% British, RSPCA assured, free range. But we're not in a position to share all of those messages with our customers on our packaging and in restaurant. And we've had to make some choices in that instance.
But perhaps it can be part of our ongoing dialogue. Yeah. Thank you. Lovely. Thank you very much, David. If I can now hand over to Tom Bradshaw, please.
David, you've spoken very eloquently about brand creation and differentiation of premium products, but there's also basic ranges and a large percentage of the consumer that just wants to buy cheap food. We're often told that the public don't want it or won't accept it, be that GM crops, cloning, pesticides, or irradiation. What is the evidence on how the public in 2016 actually view these technologies?
No time to think, I'm afraid.
No. What's the response to that?
I mean, do you see, David, I suppose, do you see, we've talked about health and education, do you see the growing interest in health as driving this? Because certainly the conversations I've had with Tom and the dialogue we've had, I think as far as consumer goes, you know, if they see a health benefit, actually they buy into it. Will they go and take it off the shelf? Maybe that's going to take longer, but I think the health agenda offers perhaps a big opportunity.
There's all sorts of elements to that. You can speak for an hour, right? But let's take health. Do people want healthy food? Yes, they do. However, health is consistently trumped by convenience. You could have the best healthy product in the world. If it's inconvenient to buy, inconvenient to prepare, inconvenient to consume, even though it's healthy, they just won't buy it. And so, it's a little bit exotic. So it's got to be convenient, it's got to be tasty, and if it's healthy, that's a real bonus. But there is a clear health and well-being trend. What about new technology, and do consumers embrace that? I mean, at one level, I would say that if you take GM, for example, we're in a continent where there is more aggression against GM than in many parts of the world. I would suggest that if you take the longer-term view, that there is growing evidence that citizens, that consumers are coming to terms with GM technology, and that they accept it. They certainly accept it for medical products, for products that are going to save their lives. We certainly accept it for clothes that we wear, in that most cotton is GM. that there is a growing view that golden rice, for example, in emerging countries, you know, the one which has got clear benefits for children who are vitamin deficient in emerging countries, and we can see by the shifts away from Greenpeace in this regard, where they view it, where those who've left Greenpeace view it immoral not to embrace genetic modification when it comes to rice for additional health advantages. I think we'd accept GM for trees. So, you know, the super fast growing pine tree, for example, that we'd take that. However, I mean, the most interesting one, and that you can see the impact it can have on the food industry, is that the FDA in the US has just given the tick to genetically modified salmon, where the salmon in question grows at twice the rate as regular salmon. And you can see the damage that that can do at both the consumer end and at the industry end, where, you know, that could just sort of destroy the economics of more traditional salmon farming. At the same time, it also gives a platform for those who are anti-GM to really stir up a lot of concern among global consumers. So this is, yeah.
And Connor, for the McDonald's consumer, do you see GM? Do you see them being happy with GM? Is that something you're looking at?
So when we've spoken to customers with McDonald's, they have been unequivocal. They don't want GM ingredients on our menu. And that's been very clear, and that's our position. What we have done in this broader arena is that we've worked very closely with our suppliers and our farmers, and one area that they've talked to us about is how it's becoming increasingly difficult to source non-GM feed. It's more difficult to segregate the product, and it's more difficult to buy it in a cost-effective fashion. So that's something that we looked at very closely. We engaged with not only our farmers and our suppliers, but with customers. And that was an area that we felt it was appropriate to make a considered and prudent decision to allow GM feed within our supply chain.
David, do you want...
But, you know, it's intriguing because, and to some extent, the discussion is academic, because if you look at soy and corn as being the two principal raw materials, raw ingredients of the food industry globally, and something like 80% of them, of course, are GM. And we just find it convenient not to make a big noise about that.
Okay. There's a continuing big role for education on that one. Before I hand over the mic to James, could we have John Gatenby to the microphone? And James, are you ready with your question?
McDonald's have invested in UK agriculture by sourcing 100% beef from UK and Irish farms, sourcing 100% RSPCA assured pork, and 100% UK free-range eggs. For this, you should be applauded. However, why has this investment not been echoed across your poultry meat supplies, with only around 10% of your poultry meat being sourced from UK farms? And what could be done to improve the ratio to 100% over the next 5 to 10 years?
Very, very good, James. Just to interject very quickly on behalf of all the beef farmers here, we are not, and we have never been happy with the dual sourcing, which you're well aware of out of Ireland as well. So we'd always prefer just sourcing in the UK out of, well, buying British rather than Irish, I guess. But yes, can we have your thoughts on poultry going forwards?
Well, firstly, James, thanks for the recognition of the progress that we've made on so much of our menu in terms of British sourcing. Thank you. Well, I think everybody in the industry would recognise the exceptional level of growth that we've seen in the market with chicken. Certainly at McDonald's, we've seen that over a number of years, and in part it's been driven by the innovation that we've brought onto our menu. In relation to chicken sourcing and where it originates from, there is a bigger, broader challenge across the British poultry industry, which is in part as a result of that exceptional level of growth on a consistent basis. The British poultry industry is not in a place where it can satisfy 100% of that demand and is some way off. And I think the numbers that I've seen recently have suggested that 60% or thereabouts of what British consumers want in terms of chicken could be satisfied from within British producers. So there is a broader industry challenge that we all need to play a role in contributing to. That said, it's important to recognise that the vast majority of the chicken that we source for our UK restaurants is sourced from British producers and from European producers. In terms of the last point of the question about what can be done, I referenced earlier on about how important innovation in terms of recipe and product has been, and suppliers have played an integral role within that. So although the 10% may be the focus of attention, as a result of the innovation that we've been able to bring onto our menu in conjunction with suppliers, the absolute volume of British chicken, the absolute volume of overall chicken that we source and we sell has increased dramatically over the last 5 years. And I would encourage, as we will be focusing upon ongoing innovation in product and in sourcing, that to be an area for all of us to be galvanising our attention on.
And 5 seconds here to David.
Just a cocktail conversation nugget that in 2015 that McDonald's globally sold more chicken than they sold beef, just by the by. Tell your neighbour.
Well, looking at the number of poultry sheds that are going up in this country, I think we will soon be able to get to that 100% supply for you. I would be confident of that.
And this is absolutely a position that we'll continue to look at. I don't envisage it changing in the very near future, but we're actively keen to understand what role we can play in terms of supporting some of the challenges that farmers face around planning applications and what guidance we can provide around innovation and where our requirements will sit in the future.
Okay. Damian.
Yeah, I mean, I would say exactly the same as Connor. Our biggest challenge is being able to get the amount of volume of British poultry for our customers. Part of my presentation was saying many customers are asking about where beef and lamb comes from, and that's consistent. One thing we never get asked for from any of our customers is where does the poultry come from, certainly within our area, within Foodservice. So as part of that, in terms of our range, we have a British red tractor and we have a European offer. Most of our customers tend to go down the route of the European offer because of the commercial viability of it. Other customers want it because, from the gentleman that said earlier on about putting red tractor on menus, absolutely, if they have a red tractor menu, they want it on there. But if you look at the volume of poultry that we sell on a weekly basis, the majority of that is EU, a very small percentage, very like McDonald's is British. But we would want to work with and more closely with British poultry farmers to get that increased, no doubt about it.
Excellent, thank you. We are actually running slightly short on time, so if we can hand over our last question to John Gatenby, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The introduction and the future enhancement of the living wage will adversely affect the food chain. For us, it is particularly horticultural sector, but I'd imagine it's an issue for both of your businesses. How are you going to accommodate the pressures of the national living wage on you and on your suppliers? Thank you.
Damian, do you want to pick that up?
Yep. As a business, Bidvest is supporting the national living wage. There was a meeting this Thursday about how we're going to do that, so I can't give you too much information on it as of now. But certainly as a business, Bidvest group of companies within the UK is going to support that. There are several ways that you can do it. So if you don't mind, I'll be able to get back to you later on in the month about how we're going to do that. But certainly as a business, we are supporting the living wage.
And Connor, how's that?
Well, as an employer of 100,000 people across the UK, we absolutely recognise how important it is that we've got the right remuneration and development package in place, including how much we pay our people. And that equally applies to our supply chain. But I would recognise that within different supply chains, wages play a very different role. So within fresh produce, it's a very, very big part of the overall cost base. So where our focus and our attention is around making sure that we pay a fair price, irrespective of what that supply chain looks like and irrespective of what the contributors are to those pricing requirements. And if you think back to why that's important for us, I'd repeat that earlier point, which is we only source 200 products for our menu. It's not in our interests to shortchange in the price that we pay and the price that we contribute to wage payments within our supply chain. So this is an area that we continue to work very closely with our farmers and our suppliers on, and it's one that we'll absolutely be at the forefront of in terms of ensuring that we continue to offer fair pricing.
Connor, thank you. And are you looking, presumably you're looking at having to put prices up? Because I think we're all in complete agreement. We absolutely all support the living wage. But it's how do we stop the primary producer carrying all the risk? So are you looking at that? Presumably you are.
We're looking at a number of elements. Passing on costs of production to the ultimate final consumer is theoretically one of those there, but we're equally got to be very mindful about the value for money sensitivity that our customers certainly have. So there's a number of areas that we look at. One of the things that I talked about earlier on was around the beef carbon report. In part, the reason why we're excited about the opportunity that presents is the level of efficiency savings that can provide into, in this instance, the beef industry. And that's one of many examples around areas that we're listening to farmers about where they think there is opportunities to improve efficiency, working with them to try and identify solutions, and then getting on with it as quickly as possible to deliver those solutions.
Thank you, Conrad. David, your thoughts?
Differential wage rates can move industries, and you can just see it around the world. Look, the industry is moving from China to Vietnam, and from Vietnam to Bangladesh, across a range of textiles, for example. And also, if you get ahead of the market, you can do real damage to an industry. I mean, a good example would be Australia, where the minimum wage is substantially more than the living wage will be here, and it will devastate fresh produce exports, for example, from Australia. But I think, if I reflect back, and I know there are some soft fruit guys in the audience, Paul Kelsey, for example, I know that if you're in high-value horticulture and you're reliant on imported labor and you're looking at relatively low-cost labor, actually you don't want people working for you who can only earn the minimum wage. You want people who are going to be way more productive than that. And isn't that part of the challenge, that we've got to come to terms, it is what it is, or what it's going to come to be, and we've got to help the staff become more productive, and then look for those who can earn twice the living wage, for goodness sake, if there are opportunities on the farm through technology, etc.
But just to come back on that, we know that we haven't had a rise. Let's talk about hand-picked, fruit and veg that is reliant on the human hand. We haven't had a rise per kilo in the last 15 years, so we have an ongoing retail price war that is not going to end. How are we going to mitigate those challenges? Is the consumer going to pay more? It wouldn't look like it in this retail price war. That, to me, is the challenge when you factor this in. Without consulting, all our horticultural producers are really supportive of this, but how do they factor it in?
Well, it'd be lovely if retailers are going to say, fine, we'll just jack the prices up. But if you look at the dynamics of retailing in the UK over the next 5 years, it's going to get tougher, not more cozy, I would suggest. What this will do, is, just to reiterate, is drive technology, and we'll be looking back in 10 years' time saying, we used to pick those by hand. Can you imagine?
So, are we inside 10 years for picking the strawberry with a robot?
I would think so.
Would you?
I would think so.
Okay, I think it remains a significant challenge, and we're out of time there, but we shouldn't underestimate the challenge for this going forwards. And I personally don't think we'll have a robot for our berries within 10 years, but it'd be nice to think so. But look, let's finish it off there. I think it's been 3 fascinating presentations. A lot of talk about sustainability. We're reminding everybody within our building at the NFU, sustainability equals profitability, because if you're making a pram in China or growing carrots in Cornwall, if you continue to produce them below the cost of production, you will not have sustainable businesses. So sustainability is hugely important, but it does equal profitability. I think also fascinating hearing about better use of adjectives. If we're going to add value, you have to have a story attached to it. If people are going to pay 15 times more for beef than they are for potentially chicken, there's got to be a story attached. So thank you, 3 great presentations. Just a few housekeeping. You've got to take this to the dinner. If you don't have it on, you won't be allowed in. Please make sure that you get to your breakout sessions by 5 to 4 to be there in plenty of time. But in the meantime, please give a very big thank you to our panelists.